On today's Locked On Texan podcast, day one of training camp is in the books. It was hot outside, but so were the Texans. Cody and I review day one as we look at the good and concerning from day one. And we also discuss the Titus Howard contract extension and what does that mean moving forward.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Thursday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. First day of training camp is why we are here today. If you are new to the Locked On Texan podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Texans if you are one of our everydayers. Shout out to you guys for checking us out again. I am your Texas football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman, and of course, joined by none other than the man with the plan that was out there in the heat for the Texans beat. Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis.
John, I've been complaining about the heat a lot, but I don't know if it's because I was just excited, but it wasn't that hot on yesterday. It really wasn't. We had a cloud. We had a nice little breeze from time to time, and the heat was manageable. Let me just say that, man.
Let's talk about the Houston Texans on day one. We got to talk about D'Amico Ryans and I think Jonathan Joseph as mentors for this young team. Not necessarily a young team. The Texans are actually one of the older teams, but they have the core players are the younger players for this roster. Howard locked up for another 3 years through 2026, and so that's a conversation that is a must. But Cody, we are not going to start today's show. It is a must that we talk about day one for the Houston Texans at training camp. Guys, you got Nick Caserio joking about Steven Nelson not liking his wardrobe selection. You got John Metchie practicing without any restraints. You got the connection of Nico Collins and C.J. Stroud growing. You even got Coach D'Amico Ryans confirming he will be calling defensive plays.
Oh, my God, what a surprise.
The year, Cody, when you were out there, what were your top takeaways, your wins for the day, your concerns for the day? Let's talk about day one of training camp.
Well, I'm going to start off with the wins, and the biggest win of all was John Metchie III making his return back to the practice field. And I love seeing that because actually on Monday marked the 1-year anniversary of when we got the unfortunate news that Metchie was going to be out the entire 2022 season due to his battle with leukemia. And that news came the same time when he was still recovering from that ACL injury. Look, John Metchie, he did not complete any type of catches or anything like that, but it was just nice seeing him back out there on the field, lining up with the ones and the twos, John. I must say, I guess Coach D'Amico Ryans ran across the podcast we did a couple days ago when you said, look, wrap John Metchie out of the plastic because he's brand new. Just go out there and put him on the field. Don't hold him back. And I can honestly say day one of training camp that I don't think that the Texans are going to hold John Metchie back. Of course, they're going to take their time with his development. Of course, they're going to make sure he gets the appropriate amount of time to go out there and learn the game on the NFL level. But the fact that he was out there lining up in the slot, playing with the ones, playing with the twos, he looked very good. Which, by the way, even though he did not have a reception, John Metchie understands and knows how to create separation between him and his defender. Because there were several times coming off that line of scrimmage, and one time he was actually going up against Desmond King. There were several times where I looked and saw him do a couple moves. I was like, oh, he got open. If this was a realistic game, if this was a full-fledged game, John Metchie would have been open for a couple receptions. But to understand how great it was to see John Metchie back out there on the field. Of course, that was one of the main things we talked about with Coach D'Amico Ryans on yesterday, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah, having Metchie out was, it was awesome to see. Right, you see a guy who's been through so much, and just a credit to him and the work that he's put in while everyone else was away or people maybe forgot about him. Is just a credit to his work ethic and how relentless he's been in this process. While no cameras are on him, he's been putting in the work, and it's encouraging to see. And I'm happy to have him out, and I'm just honored to be his coach.
So as I mentioned, John Metchie did not have a reception on yesterday. However, it wasn't the end of the world because, John, the one thing that you and I have been talking about was the fact that this wide receiving core might have been a little bit subpar because they do not have a number one target. However, that might be a good thing because one of the biggest wins that I took from on yesterday was the fact that this is going to be a wide receiving group by committee. Nico Collins, Robert Wood, Noah Brown, all three of those guys went out there and made plays. I'm pretty sure everybody saw the social media clips, and I was right there on the side when I saw it. CJ Stroud connecting with Nico Collins would look like was a 20-yard bomb. And once again, CJ Stroud ball placement is phenomenal. Dropped the ball right in his hands. Of course, Nico Collins had an opportunity to beat Derek Stingley Jr. one-on-one in that matchup. This wide receiving core, they don't have a DeAndre Hopkins. They do not have Andre Johnson. They don't even have a Brandon Cooks. However, the collection of talent is there, and I think Bobby Slowett and Coach D'Amico Ryans is going to put these wide receivers in a position where they can get the best out of everybody. And the biggest win had nothing to do with on the field. It just had everything to do with the overall field for the Houston Texans. Because for the very first time since about 2019, and for the very first time since I've been around this team, there was no drama. There was no sideline circus going on. Everything about day one of the Houston Texans training camp was just about football and the potential and the promise for this young team. Those are my 3 wins for the day, but I have some concerns. Day one of training camp not only saw the return of John Metchie, but it also saw the return of second-year lineman Keon Green. On a day where Titus Howard is enjoying his extension, the same time where you have Shaq Mason, Laramie Tunsil showcasing you why this offensive line has the potential to be a top-tier offensive line in the league, Keon Green was there. He made his return, but unfortunately, he did not take any type of snaps. He wasn't running with the first, second, or third team. He didn't do nothing. All he did was dressed out, went through his warm-ups, and that was it. John, I'm not giving up on Keon Green, but I really find it hard to believe that this young man is going to be ready for his second season. You're looking at a guy who gave up 4 sacks, had 12 penalties, and ended with a pro football grade of 37.7, was one of the worst graded linemen of the 2022 campaign. And you're looking at a starter as well. One guy that I've been rooting for a lot, my guy, Brevin Jordan, 3rd-year tight end. We know how important this year is going to be for him. We talked about it on the show. I wrote an exclusive about him on Texans Daily over at Sports Illustrated. And the one thing that he told me, and he mentioned it when we talked about it on the show as well, is that there is no excuse for him not to have a big year. I went into day one of training camp really excited to see what I was going to see from Brevin Jordan, because not only is the 2023 campaign an opportunity for him to rejuvenate and revamp his career, Brevin Jordan did not have that much of a great day, dropped a couple passes. He told me he doesn't need to make rookie mistakes, and you drop not 1 but 2 passes. It's not a good look, man.
Yeah, hopefully that trend of him not making those rookie mistakes trends upward. But that's something that when we discussed Brevin Jordan with the tight end preview was something that I highlighted. Those mental mistakes, those mental errors on the football field is what I think has really held him back. Guys, we got to talk about Titus Howard. Cody mentioned it was all football. It was all ball on day one for the Houston Texans, which is something that this team has not been afforded that luxury, right, in the past couple of seasons. So that is a good thing. I do want to end off with letting you guys know that Will Anderson, the third overall pick for the Houston Texans, ran with the second team for majority of the first day of training camp. Noah Brown, Robert Woods, and Nico Collins was the first team wide receivers. Christian Kirksey, Christian Harris, and Denzel Perriman were the starters on the first day of training camp. They ran with the first team. And so just giving you guys some news and updates before we talk about maybe the biggest news of the day. I don't go nowhere. More Locked On Texans. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week you're going to be provided with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Listen, you're looking to make a smooth turn in fantasy football snake drafts with the last pick in the first round and the first pick in the second round. You'll be guaranteed to have two of the surest performers by going all AFC West with the Raiders wide receiver Devontae Adams and Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Adams has proved he remains a reliable top selection in Las Vegas, while Mahomes, he's Mahomes. And again, he'll operate with both the highest floor and ceiling among the standout luxury options at his position. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your cars right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, tail lights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the very first time. For the parts and accessories that your car needs that fits your vehicle, just look for the green check, get the right fit, the perfect fit, the right time, the first time, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
La, 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 wait till I get my money, right? La, 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 and you can't tell me nothing, right? Excuse me, did Titus sign something? You can't tell him nothing. You can't tell him nothing. It happened. Yes, day one of Houston Texans Training Camp kicked off on yesterday. However, the biggest news of the day that took place like around 6 o'clock that morning by the great Adam Scheffner. Whoa, before I even took a shower, I was like, wait, what? Titus Howard got his money. The Houston Texans locked Titus Howard up. A 3-year extension, $36.5 million guaranteed, but the contract is worth up to $56 million. John, I don't want to take too much time talking about Titus Howard extension because this is something that you and I have been talking about for almost a year now.
And I was wrong, by the way. Like, I thought that they were going to at least wait until halfway through the season.
No, I didn't want that.
Yeah, and I didn't want that. Was the conversation in between, and we just had the conversation. I said, "Hey, man, they better get it done probably before then because that money is going to shoot up, and they're going to have to pay them more." And the idea was for Houston to flirt around 17.5, 18.5. You got 18.6 per year annually for that salary. I'm happy for Titus, man. I'm happy. Like if you wouldn't mind, I'm happy because Brian Gaine didn't do much for Houston. He didn't. Like, he was going in the year, didn't have a great draft.
He didn't get a chance to.
But he did get a chance to draft Titus Howard. If you guys remember going back, it was Andre Dillard or bust. Well, we see Titus Howard is the one guy from their first round, I believe. But Titus Howard is the guy that made it to a second contract. In the past 2 seasons, Titus Howard has only allowed a total of 5 sacks, I believe, right? Titus Howard is a guy that fought through adversity. Like, I think that's what I like most about Titus Howard. Quarterback in high school, tight end at some point during college, played in the HBCU, was a first-round pick coming out of an HBCU, came to an organization that was so unstable back then. And not only were they unstable when they drafted him, the stability for this franchise just got here, honestly. And he was a guy that, through the adversity, we opened up with Kanye, right? Through the fire, got better and better, worked to get better and better while playing left tackle, while playing guard, now settled in at right tackle. Guys, the reason why this deal is so important for Houston, Laramie Tunsil, he's locked in until 2026. You got Kenyon Green. He's going to be on a rookie deal until 2006. And we just talked about how disappointing it's been for Kenyon Green to open up his young career. But we cannot sing praises about Titus Howard from where he was to where he is now and not give that same grace to Kenyon Green, right? I think it's only fair that we give him a couple of seasons. But you also got Juice Scruggs, your potential starting center for the next few seasons, on a rookie deal. He's going to be here through 2026. Shaq Mason will be here, I believe, through 2025, but maybe 2026. Titus Howard is going to be locked up and locked in and for the Houston Texans through 2026. Guys, if this doesn't work out for Nick Caserio and DeMeco Ryans, you cannot blame them because they are trying to hit on all cylinders by making sure that their quarterback will be protected. And when I see what they've done with the line, getting this line situation, and again, we talked about it on yesterday's podcast, CJ Stroud may be in the best situation any rookie quarterback for the Houston Texans have been in. It reminds me of how the Dallas Cowboys set up Dak Prescott. You're going to run the ball, right? They got that in Dameon Pierce in at least one season with Devin Singletary. And while we're talking about training camp for the next couple of weeks, I'm excited to see what X-Validate can do for this backfield. But you're also going to have 2 bookend tackles. You're going to have some good guard play. At least we know we're going to get good guard play out of Shaq Mason. They're going to protect their quarterback. They're going to be able to run the ball efficiently and do things efficiently on this offense. And so we talk a lot about Dak Prescott. I cannot knock the Dallas Cowboys for setting him up perfectly, right? They kind of set him up the way they wanted to set up Tony Romo. Injuries happen. That's what Houston is doing. That's what I see out of this franchise. And I think locking in Titus Howard for the next 3 years, that allows you to, in the next 3 seasons, maybe a big free agency. Maybe some of the young guys like the Jalen Petries of the world, or maybe the Nico Collins who balls out his money. You have money for that. But at the very least, by 2026, we should be seeing this team in contention for a stretch for the playoffs in the Super Bowl.
Hopefully, man, because the last regime, it was setting up that way. And then, of course, other things got in the way. But, John, like I mentioned, man, this was very important for the Houston Texans to get this deal done because, one, you solidify a top 10 player on your team for the foreseeable future. That offensive line is set. And correct me if I'm wrong. And listeners in the comments, tweet me or whatever the case might be. Let me know if I'm correct. But I think this offensive line, at least with the acquisition of Laramie Tunsil, Shaq Mason, and Titus Howard, this is going to be the most stable the offensive line has been since what? The early to mid 2010s, back when you had Dwayne Brown and those guys like
Brooks, Myers.
Exactly. Like because this offensive line has gone through so many changes, and for the good and for the bad. And I just love the fact that they was able to lock in Titus Howard for, like I mentioned, the foreseeable future. And you can tell that this young man has really earned this contract. And just listen to what Nick Caserio had to say about Titus Howard extension a few hours once the news became official.
And I think this morning some of the reports came out regarding Titus. I would just say, I'm not necessarily going to comment about, the contract and everything went into that. I would just say Titus has been a good player for the last number of years. He's tough. He's competitive. So, those discussions, some have come together. Some take a little bit more time than others. But it was good working with his team and his representation, try to get to an end point. Titus loves being here, wants to be in Houston for a long period of time. And I would just say, overall, we certainly put some resources into the offensive line here over the last, I would say, year or two. But the expectation is that comes with performance. So I'd say, now the hard work starts. So, but Titus has earned it. So there's some final things that we're working through. So I don't want to necessarily comment as if it's finalized. But, expect by the end of the day to have that resolved in some way, shape, or form.
Just take a look at everything that this young man had to go through. And for him to be in this moment today says a lot about Titus Howard. I'm all for this. I'm so happy they got the deal done before the start of the season. Shout out to Titus Howard, man. And at this point, they can't tell you nothing, man.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, day one of training camp for the Houston Texans was a success by all means. Titus Howard getting locked in and locked up for the next 3 seasons. John Metchie just getting out on the field. The quarterback play, Cody. I know that you mentioned, guys, Cody texted me. And he texted me, said not even 30 minutes into training camp.
We were still in warm-ups.
It's clear C.J. Stroud is QB1 for this franchise. And if that was the case while they were still in warm-ups, I think that just speaks to that young man, his aura and how he carries himself and who he's going to be as a quarterback, as a leader. The quarterbacks had a fairly decent day, got the big connection, with C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins. That's continued to grow. But I want to switch gears before we close out, guys. The Houston Texans have a coaching staff full of former players. Danny Baird, former not NFL player, but former professional running back for the Canadian League. Jake Moreland, former tight end. Gerard Johnson, former quarterback, played for the Texas Aggies. You got D'Amico Ryans, of course, former Houston Texan, great linebacker. You got Coach Shazier, former defensive lineman for the LA Chargers. Back then they were the San Diego Chargers, right? You got Jonathan Joseph, who's going to be a part of the training camp staff, former DB cornerback for the Houston Texans. A lot of NFL real-time experience is on his coaching staff, and I wanted to ask you, Cody, the dynamic and the benefits of having that for your young guys who we look at Petrie, we look at Pierce, we look at Will Anderson, we look at Christian Harris, we look at C.J. Stroud and Davis Mills, we look at John Metchie. A lot of the young guys, how much they're going to benefit from some of these pro athletes turned coaches.
That's the key. Pro athletes, they understand what these young guys are going through, especially the rookie class. Because look, we have a lot of expectations for CJ, have a lot of expectations for Will Anderson Jr., Tank Dell. I mean, we could go on and on and on. But the one thing that always gets me, and like I mentioned, after covering the phase 1 of a rebuild with the Houston Texans and the Houston Rockets, I now understand how important it is for these young players to have a mentor that they can lean upon. And for that to be in a head coach in D'Amico Ryans for the Houston Texans will definitely help the development of a lot of these young guys. As a matter of fact, and shout out to one of Houston's media OGs, Kim Davis, who actually brought up this topic of conversation of having just that one-on-one experience, having those one-on-one conversations and teaching these young guys the game away from the X's and O's.
Had a great opportunity over the summer to have a one-on-one with our entire rookie group, spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours with our rookies and allowing them to just ask questions, and I was able to answer, any thoughts or questions, concerns they had. And it was a very special moment, one I'll never forget, just to have that intimate conversation with those guys so I could share my experiences as a player. They asked why I coach, and the main reason, I wanted to implore to them is I do this because I care about them and want them to be as successful as they can be as young men. If it's football, it's football. We're going to try to work our tails off to be the best we can be there. But it's also about what I share to them. What's important to me is for them to be great husbands, great fathers, great leaders in the community.
Coach, you just finished talking about the intimacy that you had with your rookie class. How important is that with their development? Because so many people just think that the rookies want to get a hang of the NFL just by learning the X's and O's on the football field.
Right, and that's one thing with rookies is it's a lot on their plates that they have to come in and they have to adapt very quickly to a situation that is new to them, right? And it's not just me; it means more. It means a lot to me because I care about the guys first and foremost as people, as men, but it's also having a great group of veteran guys like we have, and those veterans being able to take the rookies to the side and explain, some of their pitfalls or some things to watch out for as they go along the way so they don't have to go through the same mistakes.
Talking to Coach DeMeco Ryans right there was one of my favorite moments of day one of training camp. Another favorite moment of mine, Coach DeMeco Ryans talked about how cool it was because he remembered back in 2006 when he was walking across that bridge as a rookie to participate in his very first training camp for the Houston Texans. And almost 20 years later, he is making that same walk, but this time as the head coach, the sixth in franchise history. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's only day one. I'm not about to get into the whole how many wins will the Houston Texans get in 2023 and all that other stuff, but I will tell you this day one of training camp is definitely the start of something special with this generation, with this regime, with this version of the Houston Texans, because for the first time, it seems like every single important attribute that you need, whether on the field and off the field, the Houston Texans got. Now you just need to give them time to develop and for it to make it work.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes from the day was from Nick Caserio. Y'all know I love me some drama. We know we're going to have to make some hard decisions in regards to roster cuts. So day one was full of good, positive energy, but for the next couple of weeks, we're going to bring you guys everything, all things Houston Texans. Make sure that you subscribe, like, comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube, and make sure that you follow us on formerly known as Twitter at Locked On Texans. Give me a follow at John_Hickman as well, _Hickman12 as well.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter and Thread at Cody Davis _24. Once again, that's Cody COTY DAVIS _24. Back at it again tomorrow with more takeaways from day two of training camp. Ladies and gentlemen, let's celebrate. 2023 is officially here for your Houston Texans. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.